Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government. Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
Before you watch today's episode, we want to remind you that tickets are on sale for the newsagent's live shows with HSBC UK. We're kicking off our tour at the Birmingham Symphony Hall on February the 17th. Then we're off to the Bridgewater Hall in Manchester on February the 24th. And finally, the Usher Hall in Edinburgh on March the 11th. Head over to Global Player to get your tickets for any of these dates, and the link will be in the description below. We are so excited to see all of you there.
Donald Trump is again the President of the United States. President number 45, and now President number 47. And you heard it there, speaking in the Capitol in his second inauguration address. He not only thinks that he's going to make America great again, but he thinks that God saved him from the assassin's bullet to allow him to do so.
It was less an inauguration speech and more of a shopping list, a campaign speech. He told us what he's going to do on day one, and he went into supreme specific detail, including taking back the Panama Canal. Welcome to the Newsagents.
It's Lewis.
It's Emily, and 8 years ago on this day, I remember my opening to the Newsnight that we were doing, which was about the name Donald Trump, rolling it round your mouth, putting it to the list of presidents, the Abraham Lincolns, the George Washingtons, the presidents that he would become a part of. This time round, it doesn't have that sense of novelty or extremity or really the kind of WTF-ness to it. It just feels like a continuation of something that started 8 years ago and probably doesn't make any more sense to those who didn't much like it the first time round.
No, but in a way, you know, I mean, watching his speech today, and the fact he was making a second inaugural address inside the Capitol, I think that exact kind of almost it feeling slightly mundane is the change.
Yeah.
That's the change, right? That is the success that Trump has enjoyed. That's, you know, when he had won that election in 2016 and then lost in 2020, it was easy to write him off. It was easy to just say that was an accident at the Electoral College. It's an aberration. Watching him today and watching him come in after all of the other presidents, you know, Clinton was there, Obama was there, obviously Biden was there. You just got the sense that all of the presidents, late 20th century, early 21st century there, and you're like, this is the guy. This is potentially the most important one of the lot. And he's done that by solidifying his presence, by winning that election. He's guaranteed himself that greater place in history. But those themes were sort of similar in the second inaugural address as to the first, because both speeches were anchored in the sense of American decline.
Yeah, American carnage was what we nicknamed, or he nicknamed the first one. And this one was the same, really. It was as if he'd never done the first 4 years of his presidency because he picked up on the same themes. And he picked up on the themes with all the most recent presidents sitting just inches away from him. I thought that was the hardest thing to watch visually, was him literally slagging off Joe Biden's presidency when Joe Biden was within an arm's reach. And you could see the face of Clinton up close. You could see the face of Obama up close.
Hillary laughed when he mentioned about changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico. She just cracked up.
Yeah, so he says he's going to announce that the Gulf of Mexico is changed to the Gulf of America. She starts laughing. But there is a sense in the intimacy of the Rotunda building, that building, don't forget, where 4 years ago there were rioters, there were people injured, there were people subsequently killed as a result of an attempted insurrection. This time beautifully choreographed, beautifully sort of poised, and yet the intimacy of it meant that you could see the faces of all those people that he was essentially blaming, because everything that happens in America is somebody else's fault, even when he's already done it before.
Yeah, and he confected, as always with Trump, he creates and manufactures false realities, right? He creates his own reality. So in a sense, he's railing against, when he's talking about elements of the economy, which are stronger than he suggests, when he's talking about the crisis at the southern border, actually illegal entry is at a 4-year low, all these sort of things. He is railing consistently against often an America of his imagination. But it doesn't matter, because as we know, there are enough people who buy it consistently. And I thought as a speech, it had all of Trump in there, right? It was all the many Trumps that we know.
Lied a bit about Martin Luther King, which no one was expecting.
Yeah, that was really, the sort of reaching out to African-American voters was really interesting, astute. But I think that the main thing, the main theme that I got from it, right, is that, American presidency speeches are always supposed to be about the political moment that America is in. Inevitably, because it is Donald Trump, it was about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The word that kept coming to my mind was vindication.
Yeah.
That's what all of this was about for Trump. And it was really interesting that, there's been all this speculation, right? There's been all this speculation about, as there always is with Trump, which is maybe he's going to be different now because he's won twice and, that must be very liberating and everything like that. He'll have left all of that pettiness behind.
Yeah, we've got an older, wiser, more astute Trump. Yeah.
And what does he do? Once he's actually got through the main speech and he goes to address a group of young Republican staffers and kind of young MAGA people who come along for the day, he does the absolutely classic Trump thing, which is he starts to give a rambling speech going in all sorts of different directions. Like at one point he was talking about the importance of internal electrical wiring, which I wasn't entirely sure where that was going.
Shoes, I think.
Melania's feet were aching and all this sort of stuff, and it was bizarre. But what does he come back to again and again and again? It is his anger still about 2020. He still says that, that it was rigged. Anger about January the 6th. Him talking about, suggesting that Nancy Pelosi has committed all sorts of crimes. Anger at the
It was Nancy Pelosi's fault that they didn't have enough armed guards at the Capitol to stop the rioters that he'd incited from going down there.
He's let none of this go. He still has all of that internal pettiness. And what is so striking about those two speeches is that actually, Trump's inaugural speech was pretty tightly focused. It was delivered in his sort of classic way, that when he's on the prompter. The Trump on the prompter is actually can be a very effective political force. That speech was an effective speech, because the thing about Trump is, and his speeches, unlike these normal, inaugural addresses, which can be a little bit frilly and a little bit abstract and kind of go over people's heads, this was as you said, Emily, it was a shopping list. No one will come away from that without knowing very clearly what Donald Trump was about. And in particular, what it had, in fairness, the prompter Trump speech, that is, it had a sense of optimism, right? We always think of Trump as being a sort of slightly pessimistic figure. What it spoke to very well was something that is deep within the American psyche, which was the idea of manifest destiny, the idea that America was always going to be expanding, that it is always going to be on the up, that optimistic future, westward and so on. Even talking about extending it to Mars.
Yeah. We should explain that manifest destiny is this theory that comes of the idea of America growing westwards across North America, which, if you're Canada, suddenly isn't sounding quite so theoretical. It's sounding a bit kind of like, well, what are you talking about? He's already called Canada the 51st state. He's tried to call Justin Trudeau, who has now stepped down, a governor. All this is starting to sound a bit like manifest destiny is fine on Mars, right? Go to Mars, plant your flag on Mars, but actually leave some of your neighbours in peace by your side at home. And I think that is a bit shocking. I think what he does give to the point you were making about optimism is the energy. You speak to people and they love him. We know that by now. We were down at the mall early this morning. We didn't find many people there, but there is a real hunger for more of him, partly because he's funny, partly because he's optimistic, partly because he makes people feel that he has done the impossible. He kind of has, he's already done the impossible. So he gets across that sense of optimism. But every time he is talking about American exceptionalism, it doesn't sound so great to America's allies.
Something that he talked about was, of course, again, the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
And we should listen to that bit of the speech now when he decides again, or indicates again, that America, one way or the other, wants to take control of the Panama Canal.
The Panama Canal which has foolishly been given to the country of Panama after the United States. The United States, I mean, think of this, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from this foolish gift that should have never been made, and Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
So that's prompt to Trump. And as I say, it's focused, actually, it's quite an effective political speech. And that is Trump as a potent political force when he's like that. When he is chaos, is the off-the-prompter Trump, which is what we saw in the second part of the afternoon when he was addressing those young Republican activists. And as I say, not only was it rambling, but he was angry. And he was angry about the last act of the Biden administration, which was quite shocking, which is we learned today, throughout the course of the morning, that Biden gave more pardons, issued more pardons. One set part of that was expected, or to some extent expected. He gave a pardon to Dr. Tony Fauci, a public health official. He gave a pardon to all of the people who had worked on the January 6th congressional committee, people like Liz Cheney, because there'd been all this speculation. Trump had said he wanted to go after these people because he thinks they committed crimes. But the later part of the day, we learned that Joe Biden had issued pardons for his closest family members, including his sister, his brother-in-law, his brother, for any crimes that they may have committed, albeit, as he said, the issue of a pardon, he's saying, I believe that they did nothing wrong, but I think that Donald Trump is going to weaponize the Justice Department against them, and I can't, in good conscience, as a father, brother, whatever, allow that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie Raskin, a congressman, sort of quipped that the pardons in the morning were for the innocent people and the pardons in the afternoon were for the guilty. In other words, the Jan 6th rioters. I think it was a slightly clumsy move by Biden because he just shared this moment, that, you know, the tea ceremony. He shared the moment, inviting in Trump and Melania, doing the whole handshake, and he had, in our own sort of thick of it lingo, buried bad news by sliding this out in a sort of 10 minutes where, he thought nobody was looking. But I guess what that does speak to is a real sense of fear, right? It is a real sense of fear because we don't yet know, and this goes back to the point about, is Trump literal or is he serious? That when he threatens to lock up Liz Cheney, when he threatens Anthony Fauci, when he threatens people who have brought cases against him because that is their job as a special counsel, when he threatens them with imprisonment, is he serious or not? And I guess Joe Biden's thinking, I don't want to risk this, right? If you are very scared, what are you going to do? You're going to keep your family safe. He doesn't believe that Trump is a Democrat. He's seen it with his own eyes. He has no reason to believe that he will stick to the rule of law, that he will stick to the principles of what do they call it? The gentleman's agreement, the sort of the transition that has been in place each time. He doesn't know he's not going to go after members of his family. He might.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel so torn about this because on the one hand, I'm totally sympathetic to that. You got to listen to what Trump has said and take him seriously. He has been absolutely clear, repeatedly, that he would go after these people who have done nothing wrong. Liz Cheney has done nothing wrong. That committee was simply doing and performing its democratic function as it should have done. So I'm sympathetic to that. On the other hand, it sums up, I think, in so many ways, the failure and the tragedy of the Biden presidency, right? Which is that he was elected, his principal task was to
stop Trump taking over and save democracy.
Yeah, save democracy.
And he's undermined the whole thing.
Reaffirm the institutions and reaffirm the rule of law.
Yeah.
And because of his failure, he leaves office having to, maybe let's just say for the sake of argument, obliged to do this thing precisely because he has failed, and therefore setting a precedent in the future, a dangerous precedent, where basically presidents will just come along, pardon whoever they like with impunity.
And the Democrats have not got a leg to stand on. I think that's the worst thing. The Democrats everywhere are screaming a silent scream because they can see exactly why Joe Biden's been pushed to this place, but it makes life really hard for them because we will see pardons that are probably not justified in the coming days, and they won't be able to say anything.
Pardons for crimes which he says haven't been committed. And the thing is as well, I mean, look, Trump would say this anyway, of course he would, but it just looks terrible, right? It stinks. It looks like it stinks. And, you basically got all of MAGA Twitter, all of MAGA people going like, well, what have you pardoned him for? If they've done nothing wrong.
Okay, the only thing I'm saying is, like, why would you expect one political party to behave like martyrs, right? And the other political party to get away with, an attempted insurrection and behave like complete scoundrels? I mean, then you've got double standards anyway.
We're in this unbelievable situation right today where, as we're recording this, he hasn't done it yet, widely expecting him to pardon many of the January 6th insurrectionists. So we're in a position where we've got one president leaving office, pardoning people for crimes they haven't committed, and a new president coming in, pardoning people for crimes they definitely have. American justice in a great way.
But meanwhile, we are crossing to Davos, to those snowy slopes, to hear from one John Sopel, who was watching avidly.
It's John, in the snowy mountains of Davos, where it's not as cold as it is where you are. The thing that really struck me about Trump's inaugural speech was the extent to which American exceptionalism is back. That America is the best country on earth, America is unique, America is this place where no one else can compete. Obama, when he was president, got into huge trouble by saying, well, I'm sure if you speak to Germans, they think they're pretty exceptional, or any other country thinks that they're pretty exceptional. But Donald Trump had this optimistic end to the speech where he invokes the spirit of the frontiersmen who got their wagons together and rode across the United States of America to go west and open up the new frontier of America and what it would mean to be an American. And there was real hope in what he tried to portray as the future of America, of course, with him as president.
Our country was forged and built by the generations of patriots who gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. They were farmers and soldiers, cowboys and factory workers, steel workers and coal miners, police officers and pioneers who pushed onward, marched forward, and let no obstacle defeat their spirit or their pride. Together they laid down the railroads, raised up the skyscrapers, built great highways, won 2 world wars, defeated fascism and communism, and triumphed over every single challenge that they faced. After all we have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in American history. With your help, we will restore America, promise, and we will rebuild the nation that we love, and we love it so much. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So to every parent who dreams for their child, and every child who dreams for their future, I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We're going to win like never before.
Now, I reckon that will get cheered in all sorts of quarters. And it was a far cry from the American carnage speech of 8 years ago when George W. Bush looks to Michelle Obama and says, well, that was some weird shit. Look, Trump's won the election. He has won the political argument for now. And a lot of what he said was a restatement of everything we'd heard on the campaign trail. But I just think there was a bit more of the vision thing, whether he can do it, whether he can deliver it. He set the bar very high for himself. And this time round, unlike last time, he's got control of everything. He'll only have himself to blame if he falls short.
One day he'll actually come on the show again properly. Do we know when that will be?
Somebody gave him a travelling mic, and since then we haven't seen anything of him.
Yeah, where next? Okay, right, we will be back just after this, where I believe you've been speaking to, well, I suppose the new John in a way. Potentially. He probably claimed he was John Sopel at some point.
Yeah.
We'll put that on his CV.
His name is George Santos, and we've discussed him quite a lot on our US podcast. He is a former New York congressman from the 3rd District. He is a pathological liar and a convicted felon, and he's utterly charming. And we think you should hear what he thinks of what's happened today. Well, joining us now, George Santos, who used to be in the House of Representatives. Just remind us, George, for our listeners and our viewers, how you left that job.
They dragged me out.
You got expelled.
I got expelled, yes. I was expelled from the House of Representatives, being only the 6th member ever, but one without any convictions and one that did not join the Confederacy.
But you are a convicted felon.
Not yet, no. Not until I'm sentenced. That's how it works in federal court.
So you are sitting here waiting to be sentenced, having been kicked out of the House of Representatives. But because this is the new era of Trump, I'm just going to say, how did you like the speech?
If I told you the truth, I didn't listen to the speech.
You're kidding.
I couldn't. I was in a room. I was at the Waldorf Astoria. It was echoey. All I got were bits and pieces and Hillary Clinton laughing and nodding her head. So I still don't know what transpired, and I've been on this vacuum. All I can say is Melania looks stunning, and I can also say is that I don't like that it was indoors. I think we could have handled the cold.
You think it was a bit of a wuss, or you think there was a security fear, or what do you think went on?
I don't think it was the weather. So I was speaking to former colleagues of mine, and we were talking about this, and one of them suggested to me that they believe it had more to do with security than it had to do with the cold. It's not that cold. I mean, it's cold. I'm not going to underscore the fact that it's freezing.
But here we are.
But here we are, and we can bear this. There's hand warmers, feet warmers, you name it. There's ways. There's no such thing as bad weather, and to quote Tim Walz, there's such thing as bad clothing. And I can't believe I'm quoting Tim Walz on Inauguration Day. But
on clothing.
Which is even another more shocker. But I think there was an opportunity to give the American people this, because look, he did win the popular vote. It was such an overwhelming victory for him, a massive comeback despite all the mountains he had to climb. I really wish he would have given people the show they came.
So what, he came across as slightly removed, slightly elitist because he was indoors? I mean, there was no one out here. We should let people see perhaps, but there is literally kind of no one walking around Washington.
Yeah, no, it's a desert. The only thing is gridlocks of the cars, barricades in the streets. I don't know for who, but barricades in the streets. And yeah, sure. I mean, look, I don't want to say elitist, but it did seem a little stuffy that they didn't do some sort of lottery for members of Congress as guests. You know, let's put some real Americans in the room for once, and stop putting all the, as I call them, the oligarchy class and all the politicians. I'd love to see just regular day Americans and Joe Schmoes in there enjoying that moment, because it's so special to them.
Do you think he's surrounding himself with too many bros, too many oligarch bros? I mean, was that the shot you didn't want to see today?
I did not expect to see Mark Zuckerberg, his wife, Jeff Bezos and his wife, Elon Musk, and I appreciate these guys and what they do for the world. I just don't appreciate them having a privileged perch. They're American citizens just like everyone else, and I want them to be treated as such. They're taxpayers like everyone else.
Doesn't this go to the heart, though, of what Trump is about? I.e., he kind of talks the talk about being out there for average, ordinary Americans, but you know he's not, George. You know he comes in, he cuts tax for the very, very richest, and he surrounds himself with billionaires, and he doesn't really want to shake hands with anyone who's not a real celebrity. I mean, we know that is the guy.
I disagree. I was not a celebrity when I first met Donald Trump. He shook my hand. I was nobody, actually. Nobody knew who I was 6 years ago. I've seen Donald Trump extend grace and kindness to the American people many times in rallies and events, and I just don't appreciate that there wasn't a system for people to have the opportunity to be in the room today. That's something I will hold in criticism to the now, again, President of the United States, Donald Trump.
A lot of our listeners and our viewers will not be able to reconcile the scenes that were so beautifully, carefully choreographed today in the Rotunda with the scenes 4 years ago on January the 6th when he was essentially inciting violence and a riot.
Look, Emily, I think that the over-sensationalization of January 6th...
140 injured, 5 dead.
I understand. One person died that day. It was Ashley Babbitt. People might have died of injuries later for other reasons.
It left
But
5
on that
dead.
day, one person died, and it was Ashley Babbitt by an unarmed veteran, was shot at point-blank range by a Capitol Police officer. She expressed no sign of violence, but I understand the Capitol Police officers shoe. I've gotten to understand it. No.
Come on, George. We're talking about 140 people that were injured. You know that there were law enforcement people that were hurt. You know
I understand.
There were guys doing crazy things with fire extinguishers and doors.
But Emily, I was the first Republican to condemn January 6th, so you don't need to tell me that. I was the first one to go out there, criticize the actions, because that's not what America is about. Forget Republicans and Democrats. I was the first one to go out there and criticize it. I was the first one to say that if President Trump's going to extend pardons, I believe he should really do it to nonviolent folks, people who are being prosecuted for just simply standing on the lawn. That's nuts. Okay? Or somebody who walked in through Statuary Hall, moved the little ropes around, looked around, but committed no act of violence. I think those people don't need to be in jail.
But it's bigger than that, isn't it? It's not just about the pardons. It's about the man who has got back to the place that he's craved to be by ignoring the last set of results. He still hasn't conceded that he lost the last election. Why does that matter to people?
Emily, you don't like it when I say this. We went through this on election night. I'll go through this again. I have a lot of respect for you. I respect your positions. But I still can't reconciliate 2020. Because if Joe Biden received 80,000 votes, where were 80 million votes, where were they for Kamala Harris?
That is a nonsense argument. That is a nonsense.
So I'll give you a better nonsensical argument. Where is the deficiency of 9 million voters who chose to not come out this year, even though this was an existential threat to democracy? Democracy was on the ballot. If Trump won, the country would be in disarray.
What you're saying
9 million people didn't believe it.
You do not trust your own electoral system in this country.
I don't. For years, I haven't trusted it.
You don't trust
this has nothing to do with 2020.
So you don't trust the results of what has happened this time around?
It's not that I don't trust. It's not because I trust it when we win. I'm skeptical of our electoral system.
But are you skeptical this time around?
No, the American it was overwhelming majority.
Can you see how convenient that sounds?
Well, the Democrats are saying this has been a captured election. Have you not heard them say this?
No, I really haven't.
Oh, they're out there.
Haven't.
Pramila Jayapal is saying that this is an illegitimate.
I don't remember Biden going to the middle of the rotunda and starting to, squash police officers to death.
Okay, well, neither did Trump do that. Is that a fair take?
It is a fair take.
Okay, there you go. Trump didn't do that either.
There was no insurrection.
Look, I think that the way we look at it is January 6th was a stretch to call it an insurrection. I don't think it was an insurrection. I think it didn't rise to the level of an insurrection. It was a riot. It was a bad riot, very similar to the riots we experienced all year long in New York with Black Lives Matter following the unjustful death of George Floyd.
And there were convictions. Okay, George, you know what?
Not as many.
I'm going to say that this is the day when America's kind of new revolution starts, right? You will be judging Trump, presumably. I mean, hopefully, you will be judging him on his actions. I just did now. In terms of how will you decide whether he succeeds in the next 4 years? How will
he delivers for the American people?
Which means?
He delivers relief on inflation. He delivers relief on the crippling inflation that's not just crushing middle-class Americans.
So he's got to cut inflation by when?
He needs to cut inflation by the end of this fiscal year.
In half, he said.
And I hope he does it. And that's the expectation.
Is that it?
Well, that it. The border.
I mean, do you want to see him take back Greenland? Do you want
to
see him
Well, Greenland's
move
moved
into
in already.
Canada?
Well, Greenland's moved in already. So look at this weather.
The polar vortex.
The polar vortex. Greenland is in America right now, and we might have not gotten the memo. But the reality is, Emily, if you really look at what he can't do worse than we are. He can't do any worse than where we are.
He's inheriting a really strong economy.
No, he is not.
You can
that
say
is
what
a
you like.
Bold-faced lie.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
He's inheriting an incredible jobs market. He's inheriting good growth.
He's inheriting an incredible government jobs market. We had 18,000 new jobs added to the federal government, which means more crippling deficits, more expenditures in the government, furthering debt. That was this last jobs report. 18,000 of the jobs added were government jobs. That's not a good job market. That's actually awful.
So I'm going to revisit the question about Greenland because it is funny and it is kind of crazy and people are laughing it off. But actually, every time he says something like, oh, I can't rule out military action on Panama. I can't rule out military action on Greenland. Do you know what? There are hundreds of people who have to make it their only job to try and work out what the fuck he's talking about. And actually, that's really tiring for everyone, isn't it?
Look, you know what, Emily? Everybody wants to talk about when Trump says something, it's a little off-color, off-putting. Aren't you upset? And shouldn't everybody be upset at what Joe Biden just did on his way out? He pardoned a slew of people with preemptive pardons, people who weren't charged. His entire family.
Because he's scared.
Well, you know what? He criticized President Trump. Jake Tapper today acknowledged that Biden is a hypocrite. CNN is acknowledging Joe Biden is a hypocrite and a liar, a prolific liar. For 50 years, he's lied. He said he wouldn't pardon Hunter. He pardoned Hunter. He said he wouldn't pardon his family in the January 6th committee. He did. Now, look, I've had my issues with the truth in the past, and I acknowledge that. And you will always hold me to that candle to my foot.
Wait, when you say I've had my issues with the truth in the past, you mean literally concocting a whole resume about things that never happened in your entire life?
Joe Biden never was top of his class. Joe Biden was never a teacher at Penn State, and I can go on and on, right? And he became president of the United States. So we can say Joe Biden fabricated. No, absolutely not. So here's what I'm just trying to say, Emily. For you to understand what I'm trying to deliver to you is everybody's going to want to focus on Trump talking about Greenland and Trump talking about Canada. Canada will not become the 51st state. I over my dead body and the entire Republican Party, because if you look at the electoral map, it would be a disaster for Republicans. Secondly, it's like adding a new California to the map. We don't need that. Secondly, Greenland, we just need to have a great partnership. The Prime Minister came out the other day and says we don't want to be Danish, we don't want to be Americans, we want to be Greenlanders. And I want Greenlanders to be Greenlanders and our great, strong allies and partners.
Last thought. You're the first, I think, openly gay Republican.
But I'm not the only gay Republican in the party.
No, openly gay Republican, right?
I'm the first openly gay Republican, that's for sure.
So I guess my question is, there's been a lot of concentration now on the end of DEI, the end of, giving people jobs for the wrong reasons, the end of LGBTQ in the military. What do you hear when you hear that? Do you think fine?
I voted for all of that. I had the opportunity to vote on ending anything but meritocracy. I think meritocracy is the way to go. You're an accomplished journalist. Do you feel like you should be replaced by somebody based on their skin color or their sexual orientation?
I guess my question is, what
happens? Answer my question.
Well,
come on, it's an easy question.
So I'm a meritocrat, but I also recognize that the person that actually blessed, if you like, or confirmed J.D. Vance was Brett Kavanaugh, right? Brett Kavanaugh, who was accused of sexual harassment by a law professor, by Christine Blasey Ford.
With no credibility, because she remembered she had one beer but couldn't remember anything else?
Do you know what? If I was a young woman in America today, I'd be thinking, I'm not going to bother shouting out. I'm not going to bother complaining.
Oh, no. I want women to come forward. Don't take me wrong. I want women to feel confident to come forward and face their accusers. I believe women, but I believe women when it is not a politicized stunt to stifle somebody else's career because of political differences. That's my issue. Women need to come up. We have the duty to support women.
And get accused of politicizing. That's what will happen every single time.
Well, Christine Blasey Ford, if she wanted to do it, she should have done it years earlier when he was just a judge or a law clerk. Why wait until he got nominated to the Supreme Court? He was already a judge. She could have done it before he joined the bench in the first place. But no, she needed a moment to shine and do the whole big shebang with the entire world watching her testimony. And that, to me, was a stunt.
George Santos, great to have you up here on the roof in Washington, D.C.
Always a pleasure.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
This is somewhere I honestly never thought I'd be standing. 20 minutes ahead of Donald Trump's second inauguration. I'm at the very front of the National Mall. I can see the Capitol building, and there's no one here because it's all happening behind doors now.
I'm from Austin, Texas.
And how much did you spend to come here?
I don't know. I have to ask my fiance.
I mean, between airfare and hotels, probably $2,000 or $3,000.
It's not as cold as we thought it was going to be.
Right.
Would have been
You think they should have done it outside?
100%.
Right, because you're ready for the cold,
yeah,
right?
we're real Americans.
So can I ask about your ear?
Yes, it's in honor, or not in honor, but to show remembrance for when President Trump was almost assassinated.
Have you worn it ever since that day?
Yes, I have.
You've worn the bandage every day?
Every day since that day in Butler.
And what does it mean to you to have the ear bandage?
I remember, so I remember and everybody else remembers.
Never forget, I got my ear pierced.
So you got your ear pierced instead of wearing the bandage?
Correct. In the right ear, in remembrance of Trump being shot, everything he's gone through. To be here today, for the people, of the people.
Did you do anything for your ears, sir?
No.
Just these two?
Just these two.
Does it matter that you're out here without the big crowd?
No, doesn't faze me at all. It's a part of history, and it's important to be here.
Yeah.
It's a day that, you'll never be able to forget.
The thrill was supposed to be up here. It kind of went down a little bit, but now, the weather, the Lord made the weather even better for us, and we're out here. It's not 0 degrees or doesn't feel like a polar vortex after all.
Are you Trump fans?
We're mindfulness fans.
Okay.
Mindfulness fans, yes.
Okay. And what is this is nothing to do with Trump support, presumably then, right?
Well, there's a lot of people out here, so we thought if there's a lot of people, we could teach them on mindfulness.
You had a lot of interest.
No, we started this like 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
A lot less than you would think.
Where were you expecting to be standing?
I'm pretty much here. Yeah.
You're right at the front of the queue.
Yeah.
The only trouble is there's no one behind you.
Huh?
There's no one behind you.
Yeah. But there's a lot of people out here, though.
Yeah, sure.
USA, but I don't know.
Now, I know what you're thinking. There's a group of people we haven't talked about, and you're worried about them, and you want to know what they think about the Trump speech.
Because we don't want to leave them out. This is meant to be a day for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. The Davos billionaires. Fortunately, our man John Sopel is on the ground. He's been talking to them.
Okay, it has been somewhat weird and disconcerting to be watching the inauguration from nearly 4,000 miles away in Davos rather than being in Washington as I have for the past few inaugurations. But it has been really instructive to see the mood of the people who have gathered at the World Economic Forum, where you have the good and the great of business, of politics, world leaders, top bankers, the NGOs, the aid agencies, all the rest of them are gathered here. And one word I would use to describe the mood: trepidation. They are trepidatious about what it means to have Donald Trump as the next president. And, if you're the UK, you think, oh God, what does it mean for Keir Starmer and the Chagos Islands? What does it mean for having Peter Mandelson as the next ambassador? What does it mean having Elon Musk apparently wanting to bring your elected government down? Does he have Donald Trump's backing in that? And then you look at other countries and they've got their own anxieties. Denmark, what's going to happen with Greenland? And is Donald Trump going to stake an even greater claim to that bit of territory? And why does he feel the need to own it? Germany, with the worries about Alternative for Deutschland. And then, of course, you've got the Baltic states and you've got Poland thinking, what does Donald Trump do about Ukraine, and will this embolden Russia? And so it goes on. And this normally self-confident, slightly smug group of world leaders who pat each other on the back to congratulate themselves are feeling discombobulated by what a second term for Trump means. And I met one guy who kind of summed it up for me by saying he himself had bumped into 4 people today who had shown him photos of themselves at Mar-a-Lago. Everyone is bending the knee, it seems. Everyone is making a beeline to be by Trump's side, to play nicely, to stroke him, to be in his good graces. And it extends across government, industry, aid agencies and the like. Everyone wants to be in Trump's good books at this stage and doesn't quite know how to do it.
Our man in Davos there. Our man in Davos. You know what? I think that's the highest compliment you could ever give him. Be very happy with that. World Economic Forum correspondent. 1,430 days to go of the second Trump term.
Yeah. Have you got an advent calendar?
Just a Trump insult behind every door.
Exciting.
Yeah.
1 deportee per day.
Yeah.
1 million per day.
Yeah, well, obviously, lots of executive orders and lots of changes Trump is announcing over the course of the next 24 hours. I'm sure we'll be talking about them on Wednesday's show.
Yeah, more to come. Bye for now.
Bye-bye from Washington.
Bye.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.